Did you know that one man commanded the sun to stop moving in the middle of a war, and God stopped it for about half a day? Have you heard of the time when a man of God chopped down a tree and threw it into a spring of water, turning the water from bitter to sweet and saving the lives of his people? Or what about the time where an impatient Israelite, instead of waiting for the city gates to be opened, simply ripped them open himself and carried them for miles? Today we're looking at 5 times the Israelites were super impatient. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoy stories like this. 5. The impatient spies. The children of Israel had been wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. Their food source was entirely dependent on God providing them with manna each morning. When it didn't appear one morning, panic ensued. So they went to Moses, complaining that there was no bread and asking him to die so that they could eat something else. Imagine being so impatient that you want the guy who has been your deliverer for 40 years to die. Anyway, God instructed Moses to gather the people and tell them that because they lacked faith and tested God, none of the adults would enter the promised land except for Caleb and Joshua. But their children, who weren't present during the testing, would get to enter the land of Canaan. After hearing this, the people wanted to stone both Moses and Aaron, but God protected them. Then he told Moses to take 12 leaders, one from each tribe, and go up into the mountains and scout out the land. They would be gone for 40 days. Upon their return, Moses would know whether or not they would possess the land based on the report these 12 men would bring back. When they returned, 2 of the spies, Joshua and Caleb, encouraged the people to go to war and conquer the land. They described how the cities were ripe for the taking and how the enemy nations were weak. However, the other 10 spies told a different story. They said it was a land flowing with milk and honey, but its inhabitants were giants, and they themselves were like grasshoppers in their eyes. Naturally, the people began to complain and whine, saying they weren't strong enough to conquer such a powerful nation. This lack of faith in God made him very angry. And just as he had said, none of the adults would enter the promised land except Joshua and Caleb. 4. Hagar, impatient and alone. Hagar was an Egyptian servant girl given to Abraham's wife, Sarah, as a concubine, because Sarah couldn't bear children. When she found out she was pregnant, she looked down on her mistress, which caused Sarah to mistreat her. This made Hagar flee into the wilderness. While she was there, an angel of God spoke to her and told her to return to Sarah and submit herself to her. He also told her that her son would grow up to be a wild man and that she should name him Ishmael. When she returned to Sarah, Isaac was eventually born, which made Hagar and Ishmael even more insignificant in the household. This likely led to Hagar's extreme impatience, which resulted in her sending Ishmael away into the wilderness to die. She only made it about 3 days before God spoke to Abraham, telling him that if he could see the spot where Hagar had left Ishmael, he would help him. Abraham did what he was told, and God then asked him if he was willing to sacrifice his only son, Isaac, as a burnt offering. Abraham got ready to do this, but just before he was about to stab his son, an angel stopped him and told him that he had proven his faith by being willing to sacrifice his son. And then an animal was provided for the burnt offering instead of Isaac. 3. Gideon, the impatient judge. The Israelites were enslaved by the Midianites and lived in fear. They cried out to God for help, and he raised up Gideon as a deliverer. However, Gideon needed some convincing. When the angel of the Lord first approached him, Gideon said, "If the Lord is going to use me to deliver Israel, why has he allowed me to come from the weakest clan in the tribe of Manasseh?" But the angel reassured him and gave him a sign. Gideon still wasn't convinced, so he asked for another sign, which the angel granted. Still, Gideon remained unimpressed. It wasn't until he was visited a 3rd time that he finally believed. Even then, Gideon continued to question God's plan. He said, "How can I drive out the Midianites? I'm just a lowly farmer." The angel replied, "I'll be with you, and you'll defeat the Midianites as if you were fighting against one man." Despite this reassurance, Gideon was still afraid. So he asked for yet another sign, which was granted, and he prepared for battle. He blew a trumpet, called together 300 men, attacked the Midianite camp, and they were defeated. So God delivered Israel through Gideon, despite his impatience and lack of faith. 2. Hezekiah, the impatient king. When Sennacherib, king of Assyria, heard that Hezekiah had become king of Judah, he sent his general, Tartan, with a huge army to attack him. Hezekiah's officials urged him to pay tribute to the Assyrians, so they would leave him alone. But Hezekiah refused, declaring that he didn't want to submit himself to any king under the sun. So the Assyrians laid siege to Jerusalem. Hezekiah prayed earnestly for deliverance, and while he was praying, the angel of death came to destroy the city. But God stayed the angel's hand and gave Hezekiah and the people 18 more years before judgment would come. When Hezekiah received this news, he was so excited that he showed the royal envoy all around the city, showing them the palaces and gardens. This boasting, however, made God very angry, and he took away Hezekiah's health, possibly leaving him paralyzed from the waist down. Hezekiah repented, saying, "Remember, O Lord, I have acted in accordance with the anxieties of my heart, which you have caused to abound in Jerusalem." God then told Isaiah to tell him that half of the bad things he had planned to do to Jerusalem would now be done to him. Hezekiah begged for mercy, saying, "This is a light thing for you to say, my lord. Is it a common thing for a man to live only 15 days? Who can live 15 days, my lord? If you return, I will wait another 15 days." That same night, God healed Hezekiah and gave him 15 more years to live. Hezekiah spent those last 15 years ruling wisely and faithfully over Judah. Number 1. The impatient Israelites. During the Exodus, the Israelites had just crossed the Red Sea and landed at Marah. They soon became thirsty and complained bitterly to Moses. He then brought them to a spring of water, but it was bitter. This made them complain even more, saying that they would die of thirst. So Moses cried out to God, who told him to throw a piece of wood into the water. He did so, and the water turned sweet. They journeyed on until they arrived at Elim, where there were 12 springs of water and 75 palm trees. They stayed here for 7 days, and after that they started to run out of water again. Once more, they complained to Moses, and he led them to a place called Rephidim. There the Amalekite and the Canaanite kings attacked them, but Moses lifted up his hands and Israel won the battle. Later that evening, Aaron and Hur, who were helping Moses hold up his hands, noticed that his arms were getting heavy, so they got 2 stones to sit on and sat him down on one of them. As long as Moses' hands were raised, Israel was victorious. But when they grew weary and lowered their hands, the Amalekites began to gain the upper hand. Realizing this, Aaron and Hur held up Moses' hands, causing the Israelites to win the battle. So God promised Moses that he would write down what he had done on that day, saving it for a future generation to know. Which of these stories did you like the most? Let us know in the comments below.